The following is an AZPM original production.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, meet Tom Ray, the host of the PBS series Papa Ray's Vintage Vinyl Roadshow. He's exploring the U.S. and the world to celebrate record store culture. I'll talk with artist Elizabeth Burden about a new project exploring the intersection between substance abuse, recovery, and public art. It's called Say One Thing. Listen to nature writer Rebekah Doyle's story about getting to know a hummingbird with a big personality. And then visit the Arizona-Sonora Desert Museum's Raptor free flight program for some behind-the-scenes information. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. People who love collecting music often look at an old-fashioned record store as an almost sacred space where one can listen, look, and learn, seeking out music that can sometimes be life-changing. Once thought of as a dead form of media, vinyl records have never really gone away thanks to hip-hop, and in the early 2000s, records experienced a popular revitalization that continues to this day. Tom Ray is the owner of Papa Ray's Vintage Vinyl in St. Louis, Missouri. He grew up in the Deep South and soon acquired a passion for music that has led him today to be the producer and host of a PBS series called Papa Ray's Vintage Vinyl Roadshow, which has just been picked up for a second season. Ray travels the globe, visiting record stores large and small, and talking to fans from all different backgrounds. I spoke with Ray by telephone as we scratched the surface of a topic that we both deeply love. I started by asking him the first question he always asks his guests. What was the first record you remember owning?
You know what I love about this question, too? When you ask somebody that, I can really often see in their face, it opens up the rooms of memory, and it puts them into a different time and place for them to recall that. My first purchase, or the first time I had an LP bought for me, was by my mother, and I had behaved well on a visit to Charleston, South Carolina, to see relatives, and I picked out an album called Atlantic Gold Soul, Volume 2.
Okay.
Because in 65 and 66, I was hearing Otis Redding, I was hearing James Brown, Joe Tex, that kind of music, Wilson Pickett, and I was very, very, very moved by that kind of music at that age.
And it still plays a huge part. I mean, is your DJ name Soul Selector?
I have DJ'd in St. Louis on radio for 37 years on a Monday afternoon drive time show. When I was in college, I was the guy that was bringing records in to put on the player, knowing that there was a party, but chances were it might be a Neil Young record on, but I was bringing in Kool and the Gang.
Mm-hmm. So soul and R&B has always been a good place for you.
Growing up in the Deep South, it was ubiquitous. Blues as well, too, because, before I'd even heard the name Eric Clapton, I had bought a B.B. King album and a John Lee Hooker record. And that music was just always something I liked. I liked Ray Charles, that kind of thing.
Is there still for you a holy grail record out there that is always in your mind when you visit a new spot to look for?
Not really. I mean, there are certain records that I wouldn't mind having, but, if they never come my way, it's not like I feel there's a giant hole in my life. I get an enormous amount of opportunity to express my musical taste. Being able to walk into my record store is always a pleasure. Sometimes I kind of think that what I've gotten to do in St. Louis is being a musical pharmacist. I can remember during the Rodney King affair, one of my young, angry customers came in, and when I even looked at him, I could see he was just sort of like just about to explode. He just was his manner. And I was cleaning CDs at the time, and I recall him coming back and looking at me and going, I just had to come in here to cool down. And I looked at him and said, well, I've got one. This one's on me. I want you to take this Miles Davis CD. I want you to go home tonight, and I want you to listen to it twice. If you're not better in the morning, call me.
And which Miles album was it?
In a Silent Way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, great choice. Is there a particular album cover that over the years you have really grown to love and one that you've maybe grown to hate?
I can't recall an album cover that I hate.
Yeah?
And a lot of times, if it's a band I didn't particularly like, I'll forget what the cover even looked like. But certain albums that were on the Blue Note label, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Those black and white photos were just so gorgeous to me and so direct. James Brown's album, Soul Brother No. 1, which had a raised, embossed kind of front cover and with pictures of him on stage, which was my first James Brown record. And on the back, it even had a perforated picture of him that you could dislodge from the album and put on your wall, I guess. And I still remember the message on it. It was a kind of a rhyming little poem by James Brown to his fans. Well, you are always right with Mr. Dynamite, so please, please, please stay out of sight. Don't be a drag in your brand new bag.
In your collection, do you have a section of something that's kind of oddball, like air traffic controller clears or some sort of spoken word subgenre that's kind of like your secret annex? It's part of your collection that you're very proud of, but not everybody may get it.
First off, I've certain spoken word records are interesting to me. There was a comedian in the Deep South in the 60s named Brother Dave Gardner, who I would describe sort of as kind of like the closest thing to a Southern comedian to Lenny Bruce that there was. You know, I also have sound effect records. I enjoy instructional records, and sometimes on the air, just to throw kind of an oral monkey wrench into something. I'll play a little section of a spoken word record before putting whatever it was that was going to follow it on.
Mm-hmm. 2 episodes of your first season, Papa Ray, that I found particularly interesting were when you went to Cincinnati and when you went to the UK and you visited your musical cousin, Sister Ray. And so both of those were examples of places where the vinyl community is still super strong and thriving.
Oh, my Lord. And actually looking back, I wish I had been more versed in certain ways to record stores in the UK. You know, we spent 10 days there, and that 30-minute episode is the barest of scratches on the culture of music stores. I mean, the people that run them are not blasé. You can just tell they live and breathe the music. They know their customers. It's a matter of community, and I'd love to go and do another episode in the UK. We do have some interesting stores coming up for our second season, which we are finishing the editing of now. The second season will be shown on PBS in October. We have Nashville, Atlanta, Portland, Seattle, and then we're going to do an episode on what I call specialty stores, which tend to gravitate to just 1 or 2 areas of music, which I find, you know, those tend to be, of course, smaller stores and with a real exact focus. For example, a store that I really enjoyed seeing in New Orleans called Domino Sounds. Tiny, tiny little punk section, but everything else is international music. And I mean the kind of international music that unless you were in Domino Sounds, you'd probably not find it even in a good independent record store. And then we're going to do an episode that's called Crate Diggers and Hip Hop, and that will be discussing the relationship between hip hop and vinyl, and that it's almost impossible to imagine hip hop starting out in the 70s without having vinyl as a sonic resource. One of the people we interview is Daryl McDaniels of Run DMC, and really enjoying sitting in our store being interviewed. So that's going to be the next 6 episodes in our second season.
All the time that you've spent in record stores, building your own business, visiting these places, do you ever get tired of it?
Never.
Why is that?
Well, as Ezra Pound said, what thou lovest well endures, the rest is dross.
Thanks for being generous with your time and your knowledge and your wisdom. It was nice talking to you.
Really appreciate it, and thank you for thinking of us. My final remark of this is that I really feel, once more to use the prescription metaphor, I really do feel like I am a pharmacist that hands out musical prescriptions for personal and social sanity.
From St. Louis, Missouri, that was Tom Papa Ray. You can celebrate National Vinyl Record Day with a free screening of an episode of Papa Ray's Vintage Vinyl Roadshow next Tuesday, August 19th at the Groundworks Community Arts Space. Join me and a panel of local record store luminaries to share stories and trivia, including a live performance from Jaime Q. For more information and to reserve a spot, visit azpm.org/vinyl. Next, I'm joined by multidisciplinary artist Elizabeth Burden. She recently achieved her dream of becoming an artist full-time. She became part of a unique collaboration called Say One Thing, designed to encourage community conversations about topics including harm reduction, recovery from substance abuse, and mental wellness. It is guided by volunteers who share from their lived experience, and Elizabeth Burden is creating public art displays that will tie the project together.
The overarching project, We Recover Together, is a part of a larger initiative that the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona and the Pima County Health Department and other collaborators have put together that's called Saludarte, which is designed to promote community healing through art. And so the We Recover Together is the 2025 version of that, which is designed to reduce stigma by fostering connectivity and understanding, rethinking, if you will, around substance use within communities, bridging gaps, dissolving barriers, creating inclusive spaces where everyone feels connected, valued, and supported. And so Say One Thing is one component of the We Recover Together project. It is a series of window installations that have text and an underlying story that people will be able to listen to via smartphone, shooting a QR code, or some of the installations will have motion-censored sound, so as you walk past them, you'll hear the story and be able to read the quote.
What is the perceived result of a person coming by one of these window displays and seeing it? How might it connect to their internal dialogue?
I think, one, it pulls you out of your head for a moment. The quotes that we've collected are from people with lived and living experience of substance use and their family members. And they're just, simple statements. But again, the idea is to pull one out of your moment and into that moment. And there's something about the window installation, and you see both the quote and your reflection walking by, that we're hoping, will ask people to stop and think for a moment and reflect on the quote and on the story that's behind the quote.
To those who might see a gulf between what public health can offer our community and what art can offer our community, what might you say?
I would point back to, in 2023, the former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy published an advisory on the healing effects of social connection and community. So, yes, public health has some particular strategies. Medicine is a part of that. But we also need care and connection, which is, again, what that report pointing out, caring communities. And I think art allows us to make connections in different ways. And that's why Saludarte is using art to talk about public health and healing in a variety of different ways. There's an artist who I point to a lot. Her name is Tanya Bruguera, who talks about she wants art that doesn't point to the thing, but rather is the thing. So we don't want to paint a painting of connection. We want to make art that fosters connections. And so the Say One Thing installations is one part of the project, but there are other kinds of things like a recovery living room where we're inviting people to come in, hang out, just be, or can engage in some creative activities in that space, or engage in conversations with others about art that's in the space, or share a story in the space. There's no set agenda. It's really a place to connect, and through connections then maybe foster a deeper dialogue or conversation about health, healing, well-being, that relates to our lives in general, as well as substance use. There are many people in recovery who talk about the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection. There's that word again. And so all of this art, process art, is designed really, I think, to foster spaces for connection.
Elizabeth, I'm curious what materials you were drawn to from your background using a whole lot of different media to create art. When you were pitched the concept of becoming the lead artist on this project, what did you think you could tell this story with in terms of media?
So this particular project is what I would call a social practice project. And in my wider art practice, I blend studio work with the social practice work. And social practice is engaging others. So it started with the public art panel that selected me as the artist, but it's broadening to anyone who wants to show up and participate or volunteer. There are opportunities for that, to co-create the artwork with me. That is the medium, if you will. The process in social practice is the medium. Having said that, I had a very clear vision for the Say One Thing installations of using the materials that are used in downtown commercial spaces. So vinyl lettering on windows that looks like, the hours or the name of the building or the name of the business in the window as the medium, as well as sound and QR codes, because we're used to now using our phones to access other information after we've seen the little bit of bite or summary. So that was very clear to me. Some of the other pieces took a little bit more time to think about. I mean, in those recovery living room spaces, things like collaging and working with people to do that. The pop-up space that we will have in downtown Tucson, we will be doing actually a mural. The use of the commercial materials is designed to match the space being occupied, partially because back to pulling people out of the headspace they may be in. So I'm walking down the street, I see, here's the sign for this business Oprah hours. And in the next window, there's wait, that text doesn't relate to business. That text is something else. What is this? So hopefully that will pique people's curiosity long enough to get them to stop, to read, and then to engage with the message and the story behind the message that are on the windows.
At this point in time, is there any way for our listeners to get involved with the project?
All of the information about the project is available online at the website werecovertogether.online. And that has more description of the various parts of this and ways that people can get involved, from just visiting one of those spaces when they open in September. We're also going to have mobile living rooms throughout the project period. The website also has a link to the Recovery Exchange portal where people can then type in their own message or record and upload their own message that then will be used in different ways. So I think there's a lot of ways for people to connect to this project.
I found out about your involvement in Say One Thing through my colleague Uzlam Uzgar, who produces for Arizona Illustrated. And she told me that you have a very interesting personal story about how the universe may have closed a window but opened a door.
Yes, an interesting personal story, which is that transition to me thinking of myself as a full-time artist is because of the universe basically kicking me out the door. I was laid off from a position that I had in May that, interestingly enough, was focused on working with recovery community organizations and harm reduction organizations and peer recovery organizations, as well as behavioral health treatment organizations, helping them to do their work better. That layoff happened just a few days before I was informed that I was selected as the lead artist for the 2025 Saludarte. And so I had an interesting moment of, well, isn't that the universe telling me that it's finally time for me to make art full time? And this is an easy way into it because it's connected to work that I've been doing in the community and around the country for 3 decades or more.
My guest was artist Elizabeth Burden. You can connect with the Say One Thing project and see some photos of her work on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. Anyone with a garden or who supplies a water source for birds has the potential to make friends in the desert. Next, nature writer Rebekah Doyle shares a story about one such repeat visitor to her yard with a personality much larger than her size might suggest. Doyle is an outside contributor to this show, and her opinions are her own.
I can distinctly recall the first time I met some of my friends. Usually, an event or memorable incident fixed the occasion in my mind. With other friends, our friendship evolved more gradually. It was like that with Costa, the unoriginal name I bestowed upon a female Costa's hummingbird who took up residence at our feeder sometime around last August or September. Visibly smaller than other backyard regulars such as Anna's hummingbirds, Costa's short stature is more than compensated by their stouter shape. Both sexes are grayish-white below with the metallic green back. Male Costas sport a shimmering purple gorget that projects to a point on either side of the throat. Females have a grayish-white throat. Costa, my Costa, first caught my attention because of the aggressive way she defended 1, 2, then 3 hummingbird feeders against all takers. Costa hunched with authority on the clothesline, her eyes alert, her beak moving metronomically side to side, ready to launch herself at any hummingbird who dared approach her feeders. But I wasn't completely sure whether I was seeing the same individual until I noticed the small circular bare spot on her torso under her left wing. It was the size of a pencil eraser, an identifier of sorts. Even more surprising was Costa's tameness. Most hummingbirds scattered if we accidentally wandered too close to the feeders, but not Costa. She seemed to regard me with benign indifference. I fantasized wearing a tiny feeder on my finger as though a mini teacup and inviting her for a tea party. As nectar levels dropped, interest in our comings and goings increased if we had been away for the weekend and the nectar was depleted. Costa would fly up to the sliding glass as I opened it to greet the day. This was the signal for my husband to get to work cleaning the feeders and pouring fresh sugar water into them. Costa would micromanage the entire operation, darting between the feeder on the ground beside the hose and the branch where it should be hanging were he not taking so long. I could easily imagine her long, thin black bill, a pincer grip on his collar, leading him around if he didn't comply with her directions. Afterward, Costa would move systematically among the newly replenished feeders, sipping the drops of freshly leaked nectar suspended below. She eventually trained my husband to shake the feeders between refills, releasing more delicious droplets. Apparently, sugar water tastes better that way. We had become beholden to a bird whose weight approximates a penny. As with some friends, when you cannot quite remember the last time you got together, one day we realized we had not seen Costa in a day or two. Or maybe it had been 3 or 4. For several weeks this spring, I opened the door in the morning and there was no Costa. It seemed hard to imagine her leaving the urban abundance of nectar feeders in a drought year where natural blooms were harder than ever to find. Traditionally, this species migrates to coastal scrub in Mexico or California for the hot summer months, but desert cities like Tucson, with backyard nectar subsidies, encourage year-round living. Had she found a better feeder in the neighborhood? Or, perhaps as the days lengthened and temperatures rose, she understandably left to spend the summer by the sea, sipping from tuberosa flowers in Sonora. Soon after, we noticed a female Costas hawking insects over the wash, but didn't see her well enough to know if it was the Costa. Could it be her? Perhaps she disappeared to sit on a nest and was now collecting insects to feed her young. I scanned nearby bushes and tree branches for a wee cup of a nest fastened to a branch with spiderweb silk, but found nothing. Later in the spring, I thought of Costa when I observed a black-chinned hummingbird high in the Huachuca Mountains, gathering bits of spiderweb and ferrying these barely visible strands high into an oak tree where she patiently cemented a nascent cup of plant fibers to a slender horizontal branch. And then, in early May, she was back. I saw the circular spot under her left wing. Just as before, she hovered under the feeder, checking for drips of nectar, and then lingered on a spindly U-shaped branch as though rocking on a swing before taking off. I'm not sure what it means to become so attached to a backyard bird, but I am grateful that I continue to start most mornings with our exchange over coffee and nectar. For Arizona Spotlight, this is Rebekah Doyle.
Tucsonan Rebekah Doyle has many published articles, stories, and essays that spring from her outdoor adventures. Her 5-word motto is write, bike, hike, paddle, bird. Now from hummingbirds to hawks, we'll hear more about the avians native to the Southwest in this behind-the-scenes visit to the Arizona-Sonora Desert Museum and their Raptor Free Flight program. Our guide is collections specialist Amanda Timmerman.
We are here at the Arizona-Sonora Desert Museum Raptor Free Flight program. We fly up to 4 species of native birds. We often fly Chihuahuan ravens, great horned owl, crested caracara, and a family group of harrises, but it is always up to the birds who feels like coming out. One of our goals is to surround the audience with birds. So a lot of bird programs are, you're the audience and the bird show is happening on a stage. We really want people to be more immersed and have that emotional reaction to the owl going right over their head. When the owl comes across and people's faces are just like, that's never stopped being fun. Raptor Free Flight started back in 1996. It was originally envisioned as a loose, informal interaction. You come around a corner down here and find just someone hanging out in the desert with some Harris's hawks. It was so popular, it became, it's happening every day at this time, and then from there it grew. I actually had worked with birds before I started here. I started in wildlife rehab as a teenager, raising pigeons and things you find around the neighborhood, and then got doing it a little more professionally. Everyone has favorite birds, right? If you don't tell the birds who's your favorite, but everyone's got favorite birds. Honestly, kind of a favorite always has been the Harris's hawks, just because they are unique. They are sort of hardwired to be cooperative, so they're kind of playing along with you in a way that most other the hawks aren't. And then ravens are just straight up fun. They are a flying 4-year-old with pliers for a face. We do work with birds from wildlife rehabilitation backgrounds, so a lot of times we have to rebuild their trust in people because maybe they were getting grabbed up and medicated, or maybe they were stressed out being around people, and kind of reshape those interactions so that being around people isn't scary and it's fun or it's interesting, and rebuilding those relationships. The owl we flew this morning, her parents had made a nest in the top shelf of a Home Depot up in Oro Valley. Wild owls will defend those nests against everything. They were dive bombing the visitors. They had to move the nest outside. Parents abandoned it. And the chicks were so used to being around people, they weren't deemed releasable. It makes for a great ambassador bird. She's incredibly comfortable around audiences. She's been seeing people literally her whole life. There's a lot of captive breeding of raptors. Another institution breeds a Harris hawk because they need one more Harris hawk and they end up with 4 more Harrises, and then they can list it and say, we have extra Harrises who would like one, and we can trade birds, basically. It's a little bit like Craigslist without having to meet in parking lots or anything. We're all on little radios. Whoever is usually calling the demo is talking to at least 2 coworkers, 4 volunteers, and then we're talking about what the birds are doing. Shoot, somebody call Rudy, because there's 5 Harrises out. They all have names. We can tell them all apart, and they all have little personalities. So that one's going to start trouble, and that one's going to go flirt with the girl, and keeping it all kind of on track is what we're talking about the whole time. The birds are the boss. They do pretty much whatever they want the whole time they're out here, and we're just kind of fine-tuning what direction they're doing it in as far as over the audience and keeping it all flowing. Everything is positive reinforcement based. What we're feeding them is little pieces. It's basically the commercialized version of what they eat in the wild. So farm-raised mice, quail, rat. We chop it up so it's kind of generic on site. We don't want to be putting up mouse heads to show up in people's photography later. The birds do enjoy that, and they get that in other parts of their diet, but we don't put it up in front of the cameras. The reason why they don't just fly away is kind of rooted in the natural history of a lot of birds, so it's really tough to make a living out in nature. Locally, as much as 90% of young birds don't make it out of the nest if we have a bad year of rain. After millennia of surviving those kinds of pressures, they're really kind of hardwired for an easy living. So if they have reliable food, water, and shelter and nothing bad is happening, they don't have a reason to just pack up and go to visit Mexico. Whenever we're doing demo, we have to be ready to basically walk into the desert at any time and maybe not come back for a few hours. So being 100% ready when you start demo makes the rest of your day a lot easier if it goes off track. Carrying diets, telemetry, gloves, your own cell phone. We usually carry water bottles. And the reason we have to walk off in the desert if one of our birds gets spooked off or goes hunting, then you're on a freestyle hike-about for a little bit. We get into February and early March when all the Harrises are really hormonal is usually when we're doing that for an afternoon. But as of right now, knock on wood, it's been pretty low-key. People get to see an animal up close, realize that they have these in their backyard, and they actually have control over that little part of their life to help wildlife, and that they carry that forward into their space.
Free Bird was produced by David Finster for AZPM's Arizona Illustrated. It was adapted for radio by Summer Williams. You can see the story that you just heard on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. Production assistance by Zoe Giuliano. This is Zoe's last week before gearing up for her senior year at the U of A, and all I can say is thanks for being a terrific collaborator and one of the fastest learners I have ever met. I'm producer and host, Mark McLemore.
AZPM podcasts are made possible in part by donations from listeners like you. Learn more at support.azpm.org. Thank you.